So firstly, thank you very much for joining us today for what is our last webinar of 2024. We are talking about AI tools in HR and recruitment today, but not just the tools, actually the best way to go about utilising them in your organisation, in your HR and recruitment functions, but ethically. There's been an awful lot of noise around AI. There's been a really huge uptake in the utilisation of AI over the last 12 months alone. And we've been doing a lot of work with our customers on the topic and also internally ourselves. So hopefully we'll be able to share some learnings from that today. Just before we get started, I just want to do a very quick introduction to the Curve Group for anyone that doesn't know us. We deliver extraordinary HR and recruitment solutions across the entire employee lifecycle for businesses in the UK, and we do that through a number of ways, including audits, benchmarking services, consultancy, and then also execution of HR and recruitment services. We're really proud of what we deliver, and over the last 20 years, because we just celebrated our 20th anniversary, we've received lots of different industry recognition and rewards, so we always like to share that today. So today, I am your host. I'm the Head of Insights, Employer Brand and Marketing, but I've actually been joined by Kelly York, our Chief Operating Officer, and Sophie Page, our Operational Services Director, because these two have been leading the charge in terms of all things AI for our organisation, but also for our client solutions. And they will be sharing and imparting their wisdom. And before I hand over to Sophie to start, I just wanted to share a little bit of information about what we're covering today. First and foremost, we're just going to take it right back to basics. So we're going to talk about actually what do we mean by AI. We're going to look at some of the types of AI tools that are available in HR and recruitment functions and teams specifically. We'll then look at whether should you be utilising AI, what are the benefits? And then we've actually asked that question to ChatGPT, so we'll be sharing the results on that, which is very interesting. We'll then move into that legal and ethical side of the coin, which I touched on at the beginning. So we'll be looking at things such as bias, discrimination, GDPR, data privacy, potential future legislation and frameworks that are coming through, and then actually some of the kind of lawsuits and teething issues that have been in the press recently. And then we'll finally wrap up the webinar with our kind of bringing together all of our top tips really on how you can try and get that balance right between using AI, but also your kind of human expertise. We'll then give you some practical examples of great ways that you should definitely be using AI in your organisation. And then we'll be closing down with kind of a sort of top tips and an implementation checklist. We will have time for any questions and answers. If you want to drop any of those into the Q&A facility while we're going through the webinar, feel free to, but we will have a slide at the end to do that as well. Perfect, lovely. So welcome everybody. Thanks again for joining us. I'll hand over to Sophie to kick us off now.
Fab, thank you. Hello, everybody. As Sam said, we're going to look at kind of back to basics with AI and kind of get into grips with what that means beyond the buzzword. So we're going to really look at what we mean by AI and what that looks like in terms of how we position that within the market now and the types of tools that are available. So I think if Sam can pop us along. Fabulous. So we're very much talking about the development of computer systems that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. So that artificial intelligence in place of that human intelligence as we know it today. Tasks that are predominantly using AI at the moment, or AI is being used for, is very much around recognizing speech, making decisions, solving problems. And the big one is identifying patterns. So all of those tasks at the moment are a real focus for AI and the tools that are available. There's been a lot of talk about AI recently. It's definitely a buzzword. There's lots happening in the market. There's been what feels like an exponential peak in the noise around AI in the last 18 months. But AI has already been around for over 60 years. It was first introduced in 1956, and a lot of us are already using it without really realizing that we are using it. There has just been a lot of development recently, and we want to talk about that in a bit more detail, and particularly within recruitment and HR. So the types of AI tools that are available for recruitment and HR usage, There's lots of different things. There is, of course, generative AI, and everyone's heard of your ChatGPT, your Copilot, all of those types of things, and Bard and various others. But there is generative AI. There are also a lot of other tools that are much more specific to kind of HR and recruitment processes and tools. So there is note-taking and interview transcribing products available. There are ranking algorithms, there are assessment tools, application management bots, scheduling and video interviewing, text-to-speech, testing, scraping and kind of resurfacing of CVs and doing that CV sourcing. There are a whole host of different tools that are available now in the market that will deliver varying services and varying parts of the HR and recruitment lifecycle. So in terms of kind of all of those different things that are available to you, we wanted to look a little bit at kind of what the data's saying and actually whether you should utilize AI at the moment. The use of generative AI has nearly doubled since 2023. There's a whole load of stats here. 85% of AI users claim it helps prioritize and focus their most important tasks. 79% of leaders agree the business needs to adopt AI and to remain competitive within the market. 80% of businesses are using some form of AI chatbot. Most people will recognize that on a website. I think the key things are actually 72% of businesses have already adopted AI for at least one business function, but actually 78% of AI users are already bringing their own AI tools to the workplace. And that's the bit that actually we kind of want to look at in more detail. We know that AI users state that it helps them save time. 90% of so are reporting on that. Consumers are becoming more trusting in AI, and actually 65% of consumers are stating that they'll still trust businesses using AI technology. And all of this does kind of point to the fact that it makes sound business sense to consider how you utilize AI, because it can help you save some time, which you can use elsewhere. In our own research, we've seen marked increases in the awareness and education of utilization of AI in the last 12 months. The appetite has absolutely grown and more tools have been embedded. And it's moving really quickly. So there is a lot happening at the moment. So we thought it'd be quite interesting to actually ask AI what they think the benefits of AI in recruitment and HR are. So HR are, that's a tricky one to say. So we asked ChatGPT and we said, actually, what are the benefits of AI for use in recruitment and HR processes? And this is what ChatGPT has to say. So they absolutely, ChatGPT says that generative AI will bring efficiency and speed, and that artificial intelligence will bring efficiency and speed to your processes. It will enhance candidate experience. It will reduce bias. It will give data-driven decision-making. It will produce cost savings. It will offer scalability. And it will give you more insight into your compliance and reporting. Now, each of those can be broken down into kind of more detail, and actually things such as, from an efficiency perspective, you can look at things like automated screening or scheduling. Your candidate experience can be enhanced using automated feedback systems. Bias reduction. Now, ChatGPT suggests that there is objective evaluations, which can help reduce unconscious bias. It can also offer consistency. Data-driven decisions can be very much driven forward with predictive analytics and using talent insights to kind of look at identifying skills gaps and planning for future workforce needs. Now, cost saving, just two of the ways that ChatGPT feels it can help with that is reduce time to hire and a lower turnover due to better candidate matching. The scalability piece comes all around global reach and handling volume of candidates, volume of jobs, volumes of CVs. And then compliance and reporting is very much around supporting that kind of quantitative metrics, but also around your regulatory compliance and ensuring that you're up to date and compliant with relevant laws and regulations by maintaining those accurate records. It all sounds great on paper. It sounds fantastic. I mean, we'd all be doing it right now. However, there are considerations that need to be made into how AI is utilized. And I think Kelly's going to talk to us a little bit about the kind of the flip side of all of these positives that ChatGPT feels that it can bring.
Yeah.
So our view, particularly within the recruitment and HR processes, is linked to efficiency and speed. It does lose some of that human intuition. So that care and consideration that we expect from a HR and recruitment process could be affected. It will also mean that candidates lose contact with real people. I think there is a real key thing around the fact that the recruitment process is very much about buying into the business, the people that you work with. So you need to focus on that. AI tools in regard to bias, it could exclude certain populations and demographics, so you need to be clear on that. It can only act as efficient and effective as the data inputted. So although the data is good, if you put good data in, it means the decisions are good. If the data isn't great, then it does affect that decision-making process. It can also mean that you make poor hiring decisions, which will result in increased costs. So the more people you hire, the less cost effective it is. So it means it's going to drive that cost up significantly. It can lose quality and control over important people processes. And the compliance and reporting thing is a real key piece because it's only good as the controls that you've got in place, which we are going to come on to in a moment. So AI is useful. Let's not beat around the bush. It is, but there are ethical and legal considerations that you must take into account as business leaders. So recent research by YouGov reveals that approximately 50% of consumers are uncomfortable with brands using AI to create marketing content. So what does that mean? It means it undermines the brand authenticity. So you need to think about how that is applied during your recruitment and HR processes. Candidate and any employee essentially really does want an authentic experience. And I think when you work in a HR department, it's really, really important that you drive that authenticity through the processes that you deliver for businesses. So, legal. One of the big things here, you need to be responsible and accountable. The legislation is not keeping up with how quickly everything is moving from an AI perspective. So actually, as business leaders, what you need to do is protect your business and make the right decisions. So there's a couple of key legislations here. So the first one being the link to discrimination. So the Equality Act of 2010 is a law that was put in place to protect people in the UK from discrimination in the workplace and in society more generally. So AI can cause a high potential for exclusion, which is something that you really need to consider. As an example, using AI in recruitment processes could mean you either digitally exclude potential talent. So I'm talking about things like if they've not got good access, so their Wi-Fi is not working brilliantly well, technology isn't up to scratch, it stops them allowing them to actually apply for certain roles. Or it could affect those that are excluded due to predetermined screening questions that are inputted by AI tools. Over the past few years, the employment world has made significant strides in D&I, and it's focused around the HR practices and things linked to neurodiversity, which we covered in our last webinar. But the utilisation of AI can run the risk of kind of affecting those processes that we've spent a lot of time in HR putting in place. Number 2 is linked to data privacy. So GDPR come into play in 2018. It's an EU law that sets guidelines for how personal information is collected and processed. People teams really, really need to be cautious on what data they're inputting into AI systems, how the system stores the data, whether it's appropriate to be utilised with certain tools and purposes. So it's something that actually, if you're driving the utilisation of that, you really need to consider in terms of what you're putting in and what you're getting out. Putting things like CV data and personal information from companies and various things like that is not a good thing. In terms of number 3, future legislation is unknown at the moment. We don't know what's coming, but there is going to be a lot of legislation coming into place. The UK has not created general statutory regulation for AI yet, and there is a risk that that might have a retrospective review. So what you're doing now is going to be really critical in terms of how you drive that moving forward. A top tip, I guess, is look to partners who have already developed processes. They will have spent a lot of time thinking about how these requirements actually feed into what they're doing. It's a massive beast out there. There's lots to consider. It's complex. So leverage partners or individuals or people around you to really help drive where they can. You're not going through it alone. There's a lot going on in the market, and actually working with individuals or businesses to help you drive that is a top tip from us. Thank you, Sam. So some key things to think about here around bias and discrimination. So again, the Equality Act 2010, it was put in place to ensure equitable opportunity for all. So there's a huge amount of focus over the last few years on inclusion, in particular in recruitment processes. So don't let AI take away or unravel any of that you've already put in place. Bias can be learnt, so you need to consider what is being put into the AI tools that you're using and what it's actually learning from to ensure that actually what you're getting out of it is correct. It's also not human, so you do need to think about the soft skills that are required in HR. They often are overlooked through AI, so important characteristics that are correlated with background and culture can be affected, and a selection process is implicated around that. You will not also understand how AI decisions in certain processes are made. So without this transparency, the risk that you've got is how can you be sure your processes are right? It can be difficult also to defend any legal claims that are made. So if you are accused of issues around your recruitment process and fair and transparent selection processes, if you don't understand what's gone into it, it's very difficult for you to defend and rectify those processes as required.
And then just looking at the GDPR regulations, so there's a number of individual rights that sit under GDPR. One of those rights is highly applicable to AI. Under GDPR, people have the right to object to significant decisions being made about them without any human involvement. So they do have the right to object to any significant decisions without any human involvement. So if you are running an AI only process, that it has no human intervening anywhere within that process, you absolutely can do that. You can use a recruitment tool which is pre-programmed with criteria to pick successful candidates. However, you will need the candidates to gain the candidate's consent to be able to do so. However, automated decision making does have the potential to be very high risk. So you do need to make sure you've got the controls and governance to ensure the right decisions are being made. To be honest with you, our stance at the Curve Group is enter human intelligence. At that point, that is where that human piece, your knowledge, your skills, and your human intelligence comes into play within that decision-making process. As good practice, you should also provide clarity around the process so candidates understand how decisions are being made and provide them with a way to challenge these decisions and discuss with a human where it's appropriate to do so. AI can bring real benefits to the hiring process, but it also introduces new risks that may cause harm to job seekers if it's not used lawfully and fairly. Anyone who's considering buying AI tools to help with their recruitment really should ask key data protection questions to the providers and seek clear assurances of their compliance with the law. So that is very much, that is a direct quote from the ICO, to make sure that actually we as employers and as recruitment businesses and HR businesses are ensuring that actually we've engaged AI tools in the right way to make sure that we've done the right thing by our candidates. So it's absolutely in line with GDPR. It's very much around making sure and being cautious of what data is being put into the system, as Kelly said before, how the system stores that data and whether it's appropriate for that specific use. It is all around making sure that you've got robust security measures are in place and that they are protecting the personal data of the candidates that you are or employees that you are managing through any process. And bear in mind that AI systems can be as vulnerable as any other system to cyber attacks. If an AI system is compromised, it can lead to significant data breaches, which would harm your employer brand and obviously come with a whole host of other repercussions of their own. So making sure that actually you've got as much security around these tools as you would have for any other system that you use is absolutely paramount.
So, future legislation then. So, rapid development and adoption of AI technologies is far outpacing the development of legislation. So, the responsibility to navigate this evolving landscape is falling to the employers. It's something that we all need to really watch out for. So few top tips from us then. You need to take ownership and responsibility to protect your business. Think about how you can demonstrate fair processes which adhere to current relevant legislation and potential legislation in the future. Be aware that legislation changes in the future could be applied to today's operations. So be safe rather than sorry. Think about the process applied from end to end and the potential risks within those processes. We've spent a lot of time at Curve trying to really think that through, because I think we'll start seeing more and more case law popping up around things that are currently in place, but actually how the future of those are going to affect the legislation processes as they come to form. I recommend setting up an audit framework that assesses the utilisation of these tools. So once you've decided what tools you're going to use, it's very important to think about the end-to-end of those tools and what they're actually trying to achieve. I would then make sure that your audit framework kind of assesses against legislation requirements in line with that. You also need to get the right policies in place. So one of the first things we did at Curve was look at our policies business-wide and think about how actually data sharing and various other things are going to become part of that and what we need to do around that to protect us. We also then trained all of our people on those policies. Think about gathering working groups within the organisation, people that actually have an interest in this topic and explores way of working and kind of the interventions within the processes. You also need to provide an open forum for employees to flag any risk concerns. The people on the ground are the people that are going to start noticing things that aren't quite right. Document and record these risks and show a way that you were able to demonstrate how you've mitigated those risks, just in case later there is a legislation that is created around it. We wanted to show you a couple of case studies. So the top two are current case studies, one that's been settled, one that is currently in dispute. The Workday one is actually quite interesting because the end users have essentially pushed back to say they think it's Workday's responsibility as they assume the tools would be more robust. However, actually, is it not linked to the processes and practices that the businesses are actually undertaking as part of the processing around the system? So there's going to be lots and lots of things that are learned around this over the next 12 to 18 months. So keeping an eye on that is really important. So there is a bill that was set in 2024, which is not yet law. However, there is already laws in place, like we spoke about earlier, GDPR, Equality Act, etc., which is meaning that these cases are reaching court. They're going to come with some hefty fines, and actually it will be quite scary, I think, to see how that's going to materialise over the next 12 to 18 months. So keep your ears to the ground and make sure you're making adjustments as you start seeing these things come through.
And to that vein, I think it's very much there are a number of ethical considerations around the use of AI and the morality really of using AI. Very much just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. And we've got a few thoughts on that. One of which being actually, what's your stance on candidates using AI to complete the recruitment process? So as you look to bring AI in as part of your tech stack or your recruitment tools or your HR tools, actually on the flip side, what is your stance and how do you feel about having candidates using AI from their perspective within the recruitment process in order to better aid themselves or improve the efficiency of their recruitment journey? Because it does need to be a fair process. And actually, if you're saying if you've got an appetite to put in a blanket ban on candidates using AI to complete a recruitment process, actually, is that fair if you are using it too? There's a couple of major firms at the moment that are limiting use of generative AI by job seekers. There's major firms like PwC and KPMG are already looking at banning AI use in applications. Now, it'll be really interesting to see actually, how would you police that? And actually, is that practically possible? And actually, will that become an example of where using AI is actually creating more work for your human workforce? Because that is a very arduous process to then be deciphering those candidate profiles as to whether they are AI or not. So there is a huge amount of consideration on where the balance is between what you are prepared to implement from your recruitment perspective, but also what you're prepared to accept from a candidate who has used AI to their advantage in order to better position themselves within a recruitment process. There's also some key points around AI and employer brand. So actually, where does AI fit within your ED&I strategy? As Kelly said earlier, the recruitment and the HR world have made great strides in the past kind of more recent years on equality, diversity, and inclusion. And actually, where does AI fit into the above? As we know, AI, like all technology, it has limitations, and at times it might not know the answer. It might lead to incorrect decisions, or it may have some bias within it. And actually, how do you make sure that the AI tools that you bring in don't impact the work that you've done for your ED&I strategy? And actually, considerations around whether AI will impact the perception of your employer brand. Have you got backups and safeguards in place for when AI does go wrong, so that you can minimize that risk to your employer brand and ensure that you're mitigating any employee and candidate anxiety and kind of reluctance to engage with AI? Another key consideration that we've thought about a lot here at Curve is actually people are your most important asset. And actually, do you want to give them the impression that you want to be more hands-off and that you want them to be more hands-off in their processes when they are engaging your newest talent and your employees? So there are a few key considerations there that really look to where the barriers might be within AI and how they can impact your employer brand.
Thank you. So getting the balance right. So this takes a significant amount of time, consideration, and thought. This isn't something that's going to be created overnight. And actually what you need to be aware of initially, but also happy to accept, is that practices will continue to evolve. So staying on top of this and driving it is important. In HR, we harness tools to make work meaningful and effective for our teams, with an emphasis on human connection. So Sophie's talked about people being our most important asset. They absolutely are. During 2025, it's going to be all about finding the tools that drive the efficiencies in your teams, but also allows them team members to focus on the human intervention. This is about keeping the human intervention within HR, but aiding that process by evolving the technology stack to support that, to support the exceptional candidate employee experience. Thanks, Sam. So think about AI. I guess the way we kind of describe this in Curve is it's like having a junior assistant. So starting from point to work from, so i.e. you're giving it the instruction, the brief that you give it is the thing that's really important for them to go off and do the big piece of work that you've asked them to do. What you will always do then, if you were training someone up, or you had someone with you, or you had a trainee in place, or there was a graduate that you were working with to develop, you would then review, validate, and amend whatever it is that they give you. You need to think of this tool in a very similar way. We also recommend from a cost and ROI perspective, is actually start with the tools that you've got in place already or that are free for you to utilize. Explore what you already have. So in recruitment, there's a lot of automation and AI that's happened on things like job boards and LinkedIn licenses and various things like that. There'll be things on your HR systems as well that you need to look into. But before you start investing, because it is a very costly thing to do, look at the tools you have, because costs will spiral very quickly. We talk a lot to medium-sized businesses, the kind of, that have got 400 to 2,000 employees that are looking at this at the moment. And actually, it's so expensive to put a lot of these things in. Actually, they turn to providers that have already got this kind of tied up to work with, because it's quite a lot of investment to get it right. What I wanted to do though on this slide is really kind of highlight, I guess, a few of the areas that we are finding are quite useful, and where it actually aids and supports the processes quite well, without causing that kind of huge concern around GDPR or risked process, etc. So administration tasks that are quite time consuming, there's a lot of opportunity in there to utilize for that. It's good to have a starting place for templates. So if you're looking to draft some emails or policies or adverts to recruitment, there is opportunity to feed in the knowledge that you've got already, and it will create something for you. At no point though is that then ready to go out. You still need to then check, validate, and make sure it's actually saying what you can, but you can tone those things differently, which really does allow you to reach wider populations. If you've got low budget, it's quite good to start drafting your L&D literature to help you upskill some of your employees. It's good if it's quite a factual based training as well, because it can really work to kind of give you current case law or legislation requirements or various things like that. It's a good starting point. But again, how you make that applicable to the right audience, or actually how you make that practical in delivery, that's something that you would need to put some kind of support around. Chatbots and websites can help with candidate engagements. They help with signposting around their CVs. They can help with the first port of call with employee relations inquiries, so what policies they should be signposted to. They can direct to certain web pages, etc. So there's things there that you can work with bots on. It's good for undertaking research. So obviously there's lots of different versions. One's less outdated than the other, but actually if you focus on your search and you'll support things like competitor information, skill requirements, looking at benchmarking that particular role against other organisations, it's great as a starting point. It gives you something to build your foundations around. I think the other one where we do get some results using AI to enable employees better use of tools they're already using, so supporting things like creation of Boolean search strings. So when you're looking for candidates, expanding those, making them greater in depth. It helps with things like Excel formulas. So if you want to make your spreadsheet look better, it's a really good tool to put in what you want there. But I think let's not take away for any of this, although they support and aid these tasks, you still need human resources to check and validate. Whilst it does reduce the burden of what you need to achieve, and it gives you a really good starting point to create something a bit more special, you have to go back, validate, and make sure that it's giving you the right information. So again, back to that junior assistant example, you would always go check, validate, and do what you need to do. We do not use AI for things like screening and filter applications. There's a massive risk around bias. It reduces significantly the things linked to what is the most important part of the human intervention on the processes. So I think it's really, really critical to think about actually as a business, what's your thresholds around how you're going to use things. We started our session when we embarked on this 18 months ago to look at actually what are the things we would be happy to tolerate AI on, and where's it going to help our employees, and we work back from there, and anything we categorically ruled out we didn't assess and start with. So I think you've got to have the fundamental framework in terms of how you strategically want to be supported by AI, and then go and look at the tools that you've got and work onwards from there. It can gain cost, so you need to be really careful about what your budget is, particularly if you're in kind of that mid-tier organisation. So how to get it right. So summarise some of the things that we've been through then. So AI should complement human judgment, not replace it. You will hear us say this over and over again. It's been our standpoint from the beginning. It's something that we fundamentally believe in, and actually we're not dismissing it as a tool because it's really important, but what we are going to do is make sure that the interventions and the kind of human-centric element of process remains. Put yourself in the position of your employees, your line managers, your candidates, and think about how they actually want to be treated and how you would like to be treated if you were in a recruitment process. What you don't want to do if you're in a recruitment process or a HR process is in this kind of ever-growing circular motion of being bumped around from one AI tool to another. You need to be really focused on how you would like to walk away from that process and feel, because we are human after all. Invest in training for your teams, but particularly around how they instruct, input, validate, and then amend what AI generates. So it's all very well just putting in, write me a letter about X, how you instruct that, the tone that you're looking for, whether you would like it to be addressed to a certain population of individuals, how you would like that to be perceived, and like the way it's kind of issued and various things like that. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of that instruction piece. You then often have to refine instruction, and then you look at the input, then you validate, and then you kind of amend and make it into what you want it to be. You should also continue to upskill and invest in your own team's development more broadly to ensure that you grow and retain those people. So it's not purely influenced by AI responses. You want them to be even better at the bits that you want them to do. And if AI is realizing efficiencies in your team and process, consider what that free time can also be spent on. Is it that you actually spend more time and providing an even more exceptional process, or is it that you're just doing it to free up time and therefore reduce headcount? So it's something that you really need to think about strategically in terms of what you're trying to achieve. AI does not preclude the need for expertise and your own intuition. And I think if we take anything away today, that's really, really important.
Absolutely. So looking at your implementation kind of checklist for AI, and where you might start would be, the key thing will be defining your why, your goal, your purpose, and actually then considering efficiencies, the speed that utilizing AI will bring, the experience that you're looking to bring from utilizing AI, what savings there might be, and what that ROI might be. Identify what value it will add, and actually, is there a business case? What is that business case? How will it fit into your current processes and your tech stack? As Kelly mentioned earlier, exploring your existing tools first and what capability has been built into them. Communicate to your candidates and your employees to explain your reasoning and reduce any potential hesitation to use. Conduct performance testing with a range of users. Does it make the same level of correct determinations? Does it actually decision make in the same way that your recruiters would have? Implement effective governance and risk management to ensure that you've got AI assurance mechanisms in place. Use a plan, do, check, act methodology to continuously improve AI tools and their utilization. In the same way that you would, when you use AI, you absolutely do that. You plan what you're looking for, you get AI to do it for you, you check it, and then you act on it. And you probably go around that cycle 2 or 3 times. The exact same methodology will need to be used to continuously improve your utilization of the tools that are available. Ensure that you've got the ability to capture feedback and deploy the learning. Invest time to train your employees. Ensure you've got appropriate mitigations to risks and that they are in place from the start with human intervention at decision-making points. Make sure you consider how it fits your ED&I strategy. Watch out for any potential digital exclusion. And don't lose sight on the accessibility and capability to offer reasonable adjustments. And finally, above all else, ensure you remain ethical and fair in your application. Ultimately, you are accountable for the decisions that you as a business make, whether they are made by a human or by AI itself. I'm going to hand back over to Sam now to bring us to a close.
Sorry, bear with the joy of technology, trying to unmute myself so you didn't have to listen to me coughing. Thank you so much both, really appreciate it. We've got a little bit of time now for any questions and answers. If you have anything that you would like answered, please do feel free to drop your questions into the chat facility. Alternatively, you can see the contact details for both Kelly and Sophie on the screen. So if you'd rather reach out offline, feel free to do so, or alternatively go through the website and we'll pick it up that way. But I hope you found that useful, interesting, and shed a little bit of light on what can be quite a heavy subject. I am just going to wrap the webinar up now by saying thank you. In terms of what's coming next for Curve next year, we are currently finalising our trends report for 2025, and a copy of that will be going live just at the beginning of the new year. At that point, we'll also be releasing all of our topical webinars and fireside chats for next year. So because I know what the topics are already, if by any chance you are thinking about skills gaps in your organisation, you're thinking about how to unite a multi-generational workforce, balancing all of those new kind of hefty legislation changes against what your employees and candidates are actually asking for and expecting. Or actually, if you're thinking about making any kind of change or transformation within your HR recruitment processes next year, I would really strongly recommend registering for that document, and the details of all of our kind of upcoming events will be inside that as well. So hopefully there'll be some insightful learnings for next year as well. Perfect. Thank you very much. And I haven't seen any questions come through. Thank you so much for joining us again. Really hope it was useful. Thank you to Kelly and Sophie for delivering, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.